here. I'm going to take a break from chat now as I present, but yeah, this is great. So this is what I'd like to do. Talk about basic and complex mixed methods designs, talk about key mixed methods integration strategies, and also give you some examples of some advanced mixed methods approaches. So we'll start off a little bit more, what is this? Talk about some basic designs, really kind of try to get inside the black box of integration a little bit, and then give you some examples, because the advanced stuff you're going to need to work with someone, but at least it gives you ideas of what you can do. And you might see something and say, oh, that's kind of probably what I need. Maybe I'll find somebody who can help me do that. So mixed methods research. So mixed methods research is the kind of research in which you collect and analyze data, and it's both qualitative and quantitative, or you're converting one to the other. And it integrates findings from both of those in a single study or program of inquiry. All right. I always show this slide. It's not that fancy. It's just some clip art here, but I think it kind of illustrates the difference between the terms multi-methods and mixed methods. So a lot of people say mixed methods when they actually mean multi-methods. So multi-methods is you're using more than one method, and that can be more than one qualitative method or more than one quantitative method. It can be using qualitative and quantitative. The difference with mixed methods is, as you can see, the paint cans mixing the color, is you're integrating. At some point, at least one point, you're integrating the data together. So one informs the other in some way. So that's the hallmark. So if you ever write a paper saying you're doing mixed methods, make sure you've got some kind of explanation about your integration strategies. So why do this? I mean, what's the benefit of doing mixed methods versus just multiple methods? Here's a few things. You can gain the perspectives from multiple different data sources, which can enhance the meaning of your results. It's really helpful for contextual information. So not just what you got, but why, and then how those work together. You can gain a more complex understanding of a problem. You can compare, validate, or triangulate results. You can examine processes and experiences with the outcome of a study. And I encourage you to consider mixed methods results for any study in which, or using mixed methods for any study in which you're studying people in their own setting, so not a controlled lab setting. And Borshik has said, she's a dissemination implementation researcher, so am I. It's really useful because you're trying to do research in a very messy real world environment. And so that really helps you understand what's going on at a different level. So I'm going to go through some different mixed methods designs, starting off with some basics and then get into more complicated or complex designs. And so, but as we begin, you might think, how do I know what to choose? Like, there's all these choices. How do I know how to set this up? These are the questions I want you to ask yourself. What is your research question? Any design you pick, whether you're considering mixed methods or not, but there's lots of study designs, right? In terms of whether you're using a randomized control design, whether you're, doing a quasi-experimental design, whether you're, doing one of these adaptive design. I mean, there's a lot of questions about how you might use a design anyway, but it really evolves from your research question or questions. What do you need to know? So that's really the primary thing to think about. But after that, how much time do you have? Some of these designs take longer. Some of them take less time. And so you want to right size what you're doing with how much time you have and the resources you have and the research question you have and the expertise you have and where you are in your program of research. So I always think about designs as there's not necessarily a right or wrong. And some people will tell you there's a right or wrong, like you always have to do the randomized controlled trial, right? I don't believe that. I think it really depends on what you're trying to do. And you want to right size it to what you have. If you're trying to do something very long and very complicated and you're trying to do it on a short timeline, that's not going to work really very well, right? You're going to have some mismatch. So all of these things are important questions for what you might do. All right, so I'm going to go through some basic designs first. Here's the basic design. So let's unpackage this a little bit. All right, so there are two sequential basic designs, an exploratory and an explanatory. And so the word sequential means that one comes after the other. So an exploratory sequential design is one where you do qualitative data collection and analysis. Then you can see that circle there in the middle right here. This is an integration point. So what you're doing is looking at what happened from the qualitative data to inform what you're going to do with the quantitative data. And this is another integration point over here. You can interpret the qualitative and quantitative data together, or you can just do the connection point here. The point is these circles are the integration, the time that you're doing the integration. And I'm going to talk about what integration is in a minute. And we're going to go through lots and lots of examples. But the goal is to explore a problem through qualitative methods and analysis, and then use those results to develop or refine a quantitative instrument or intervention that you will be using. All right. So that's one of the basic designs. The other is the opposite. It's also sequential design, but you do the quantitative data collection and analysis first. So the goal is you're using, no, I think that's not right. You're using quantitative data to explain the results. But no, you're doing, that is right. You're using the qualitative methods to explain what you found quantitatively. Okay, so you're starting off here with you're doing some kind of intervention or survey or something that you would get numbers. So you get quantitative information. And then you say, I want to understand why I got what I got there. So then you inform with qualitative. This is very, very common, right? You do a survey or an intervention, and then you pick out some people to selectively do interviews with or something like that to understand why you got what you got for your results. And then the third basic design, and people would say there's some more basic designs, but these are the main ones, is that you do quantitative and qualitative separately, but around the same time. And then you merge the two sets of results. So notice that with all of these, the collection and analysis is in one box. Okay. So you're doing the quantitative data collection and analysis. You're doing the qualitative data collection and analysis. So you're doing the two separate things, then you connect them. People ask, does this have to be at the exact same time? Not exactly. If you're way off on your time frame, then you'd have to ask yourself whether it's good to connect these or not, because they might be from such different time periods that it doesn't make sense to try to merge the results. But generally don't have to be at the exact same time. The point is that you're not basing one on the other. That's what makes it not a sequential design. And that you're doing that end interpretation, like within those sequential designs, you're merging the results together in some way, and you're interpreting those merged results. So the goal is to use the qualitative and quantitative results to provide insights from multiple angles and perspectives and how they're informing each other. Okay, so those are the basics. Hope you got that. Got it down? Okay, because we're going to get into complicated. Don't worry about following this really well. I'm just trying to show you some examples that if you have a complicated study and you need to do mixed methods over the course of a multi-year project that has lots of things going on, then you might want to consider, some people call these complex designs. A lot of people call them scaffolded designs. This is a scaffolding, but it doesn't really look like that, right? So you're trying to scaffold and do different, you'll see the basics designs in this, but you're trying to do different things, and it includes different phases and time elements. So I'm going to show you just two different examples. I apologize for the low tech way this looks in the picture, but what I'm trying to do, I just took a picture out of my favorite mixed methods book, which is the Mixed Methods Workbook by Mike Fetters. I'm just going to show you this book. It is a workbook. It's paperback. It's not very expensive, and I have taken a lot from this. I use this book in the classes that I teach, and it's just got a lot of really good examples. So I just took a couple pictures because there's some examples in there. I do want to also just acknowledge I've worked with Mike for years, and he's a beloved colleague, and he just passed away a few months ago from cancer. So, but anyway, his workbook is great, and I'm glad that lives on. All right, so let me show you an example here, and I'm going to look over at my other screen that's bigger and use my arrow. So this is a study that has two phases, phase 1 and phase 2. So what you see up here in phase 1 is this is a qualitative case study. So they're using multiple methods up here in phase 1. They're doing interviews, and notice it says qual, and it's all in capital letters. So this is a bit of mixed methods terminology. Qual stands for qualitative, and then it's capitalized because it means that's like a primary data element, okay? Down here lower, do you see how qual, hopefully you can see my arrow, but qual down here in phase 2 is not capital letters. So that means it's not like a primary data source. It's like kind of taking a little lesser position. But the quan, which is quantitative, is in caps, all right? So anyway, here in phase 1, they're doing in-depth interviews and on-site observation, which, by the way, is a really great combination to put together. And then they're coding and doing thematic analysis, identifying design features, and then you have the result is a set of design features based on the qualitative data collection analysis, and this informs the findings from both phases, which is this box over here on the right. Then there's an intermediate phase where the intervention is developed. Now, this is very common for a lot of proposals, that people will do a development phase to determine what intervention they're going to develop. And then they do the actual intervention, and then they study that with multiple or mixed methods. So in this study, then phase 2, they're doing, it looks like a quasi-experimental study where they're doing the intervention, and then they're doing a pre and post test where they do some statistical analysis to determine if it's effective. But they're also doing on-site observations and journal entries, and then they're doing a brief interview. So they've got some qual methods here, some quant methods. So they're doing the statistical. So this is where you see that they're doing the data collection and analysis, and then the data collection and analysis, and then they're integrating those findings from both the qualitative and quantitative together. So this looks a bit more probably like a convergent design at this point, this phase 2 down here. And then all of those are used to inform findings. So this is one example of how you might set things up. This is another way of displaying how you might do something that's a bit more scaffolded. And this displays the approach of the study phase, kind of goes up and down this column here. The methods they're using, and some of those methods are data collection, and some of them are analysis, right? And some of them are something else. And then the products has its own column. So you can see what the products are, but you go sequentially down this way. So in phase 1, there's qualitative data that's collected by the method of semi-structured interviews. And the products are that you've got voice recordings, interview notes, and transcripts. Then you analyze the data. So that's the next step down. So it's set up a little bit differently. You code that, you end up with coded text. You have findings that are themes, and you have a description of themes. And then you use that to develop a survey. So this is how you could use mixed methods to develop a survey. So this is much more of a sequential design. So they're using those results to develop a questionnaire. They're considering the themes as subscales, got a questionnaire completed. They do the data collection, okay, got the survey completed, analyze the quantitative data. You get quantitative results, and then you compare those. So this is like taking that would be exploratory sequential design and mapping it out with a lot more detail of all the things you're going to do. Okay, so this is how the steps that you might take to outline the phase, the methods, the products. And you'll see this in another example as I go through, because I want to make sure to illustrate how with mixed methods, you got a lot of things happening. So the more you organize yourself with diagrams and tables and figures and all of that, it's going to really help you to keep straight what you're doing and keep your research rigorous. And then you can get good results. All right, let's talk a little bit about what do I mean by integration. So you're just kind of using this word. What does that mean? So integration is where qualitative and quantitative data come together. And it's the synergy, it's the inferences beyond what either alone could generate. So it distinguishes mixed methods. It's kind of the cornerstone of mixed methods. And you want to consider based on your design. A lot of people consider this kind of a black box. Like, what happens in there? How do you do that? So I'm going to open the black box a little bit. But I will have to say that, like qualitative, you've learned a lot about qualitative research already through this seminar series. But qualitative analysis has a bit of that black box quality to it too. It's, you know, the analysis engine is your brain. So it's not easy to necessarily tell you in a really step-by-step way how to do it all. But let's open the box a little bit. So there are different types of integration. And this is also a table that's in the Mixed Methods workbook, which, by the way, that is the first reference on the summary sheet for this seminar session. So you can get the reference for that. All right, 2 things to think about with integration. You can do integration at the data collection stage, and you can do data collection at the analysis stage. So let's go through and talk about these. And then what I'm going to do is walk you through a few examples of really common integration that is used. All right, so the first thing is data integration procedures in mixed methods designs at the data collection stage. So think about what these words mean. So there's the integration type and then the purpose listed next. Let's go through some of these. Building. It's when one form of data collection informs another form of data collection. So if you collect data qualitatively, how will that inform what you want to do in terms of your data collection quantitatively? Okay, you can pick out ahead of time, but this is when one informs the other. Connecting is when results of one type of data collection inform the selection of subjects for another type of data collection. And we'll go through some examples on that. So you can see that the first 2 fit for a sequential design nicely, right? One informs the other. Exploring is using initial qual for conducting subsequent quant. So again, another sequential. And comparing is the hallmark for the convergent designs. All right. So the reason why I have the little double I don't know, arrow things, matching, expanding, diffracting. These are all different terms that really fit really well with comparing. Comparing is kind of the umbrella term. You're collecting qual and quant and you're trying to compare them. So you're either trying to match things, you're trying to expand one or the other, or diffract, or you can construct a case. Again, don't worry about knowing exactly what all these are. But when you're writing a proposal, it really helps to have a reference book and to think through what you think you want to do when you write that into your proposal for your methods, or you're writing up your results for a paper or a presentation or something. you have terms, and you have terms you can reference. So you can reference this book if you want. There's also data analysis integration measures, and these are more popular. This is usually how people talk about integration. So there's explaining, corroborating, enhancing, initiating, transferring, generalizing, and transforming. The really common ones are explaining. So you're using one to explain another. Results of one help to explain the results of another, okay? Corroborating is results inform and support each other. Enhancing is where one increases the understanding of another. It gives you, maybe you know this much from this method, but you know this much when you have both of them. Initiating, transferring, generalizing, a lot of people don't use these exactly, but you can, where you, for example, generalizing is extrapolating quant findings from a study population to a larger population. I'm sorry. Yeah. So, some of the things you've probably learned in your research training already. And then transforming is converting one form of data into another. And we're going to talk about that today too. How do you do that? What is that? So I'm going to fly through some steps to doing a mixed methods analysis. These are the basic steps that apply to anything. But let's spend more time going through examples so I can make this clear. You want to enter, clean, and organize your data, frame your analysis with your study purpose, discern patterns, use an organizational structure to summarize the initial findings. So I'm going to go through and describe what a joint display is. Look for inconsistencies, anomalies, or conflicting findings, organize the findings for dissemination, and interpret the findings. So this is kind of like what you would do with a lot of analysis, right? It's just got a few extra steps because of the joint display thing. All right, so let's go through a couple common basic examples. A really common mixed methods design is the explanatory sequential design using the explaining integration method. So here's how that would work. You do the quantitative data collection and analysis, say you're going to do a survey. Then you utilize that information. So here's a point of integration. What do you need to know qualitatively to explain your quantitative results from your survey? So this can help you select the method and the sample for the qualitative work. And then you do the qualitative data collection and analysis, say you're going to do interviews, and then you can analyze your interview data, and then you can also connect together what are the qualitative results, say, to explain the quantitative results. So here's a hypothetical example. One of the things I've been doing lately is studying integrated behavioral health and primary care. So one of the things that we've done is you survey practice members about their perceptions of integrated behavioral health, IBH, and then you get some scores from that. Maybe you ask them to give you a score on, something related to how positive they feel about how the integration is going. And then you use that information to select practices or even participants with higher and lower scores. So maybe some people say it's going really well and they give a high score towards 5, and some people say this is not going well at all and they give a score more like 2 or something, okay? And so you can then selectively pick out people that you want to talk to. So you can understand, why did some people have a higher score and some people have a lower score? So then you conduct the interviews, you get themes from that overall, and you hear about things like accessibility, stigma, team coordination. And then you can use the results from both of those to understand that practices with higher scores on perceptions maybe also describe more positive experiences with an on-site care team versus practices that maybe they don't have an on-site care team, and that's the reason why they're not feeling it's going as well. All right, so that's a sequential design with, what did I say that was? Explaining as the integration. So you're trying to utilize your qualitative results to explain what you got quantitatively. And it also includes some integration in the middle where you're doing some building as well. The explanatory sequential design, the intent is to connect the quant and qual phases so that the follow-up qual phase explains the results. So it answers the question, what mechanism explains the quantitative results, and how do follow-up qual results eliminate what you got from your statistical analysis? The question often asked is, with a sequential design, do you do a second step analysis? Like, do you do that circle I showed you at the end? Do you do the integration at the end? You can or you cannot, depends. If you have the same sample, how does that work? Because that same sample influences both results, which is good and not good. But you're likely to get complementary results if it's the same sample. You know, basically they're going to kind of say the same thing, but not always. Like, if any of you are clinicians, sometimes you'll notice that you might give your patient a PHQ-9, which is looking at, symptoms for depression, and they fill it out, and then you do a discussion with them, and then they give you a really different answer because they interpreted different things from the survey than what it meant, or, they just want to talk about, something that's not on the survey, right? So it's not always that you'll get the exact same thing, but it's more likely. So it's worthwhile when you can drill down into the results and you can use the qual to better understand the quant. Does it provide additional insight? The most common convergent design is using integration technique, is using comparison. So you're doing the quantitative data collection and analysis, and then you do the qualitative. So you're saying maybe you do medical records or surveys, and then you have observations and interviews. And then you're really looking to say, what do these say about each other? You're really comparing the results. Do they agree or disagree? And that's kind of the basis of this. And I've got a little table here so you can see maybe there's different constructs you're looking for. And then you can have your quantitative result, your qualitative result, and then the integration column is, are they saying the same things or not? So I'm going to show you some examples, but here's a hypothetical example. Oh, I don't know why my arrow went down there. But anyway, so say you do a survey and look at medical records of patients who are receiving this integrated behavioral health, and you categorize them. So you've got a range of responses. And then you observe patients and do an interview with them and ask them what they think about this. And so then you match those up to see if they're the same or they're different. And one of the things you maybe learn is patients with insurance and English language skills have a better concordance of experiences. That's just an example. For example, the theme might be, or your construct you're looking at, is accessibility. So this is how you might display some of your results, is that a qualitative theme has a quote about accessibility, like, I would have not gotten help from a psychiatrist. The wait to have help is so long, and I would have not ever known where to start. So that's a result around accessibility. And then you also give them a survey, and then they score highly on high accessibility. And the survey question asks, having behavioral health care as part of primary care makes it easier for people to get access. So that's a concordance example, right? The results are the same. They're pointing in the same direction. You can end up where there is discordance. So the intent of the integration is to develop the results and interpretations and then really expand your understanding. And so you're really asking the main question, do they say the same thing or do they say something different? So your types of fit with mixed results is you get concordance, you get expansion, complementarity, or discordance. So do the concordance just simply means, you can also say convergence and just not convergence. I don't know, what's that word? But we often use concordance and discordance when findings are the same or different. So a question that often follows is, okay, I do that and they don't say the same thing. What do I do then? So it might be methodological problems, or it could be your sample selection. But you have choices. Here are some choices. You can say, I feel more confident in using the survey results, so I'm going to go with that as my source of truth. And then I'm going to state it as a limitation when those things don't add up to each other. You can also collect additional data to help resolve the discrepancy. You can re-examine your databases to make sure that everything's accurate. You can look to a theory to try to explain. You can do another study. Usually most people just state that they don't go together, and then they kind of talk about why, and they leave it. Most of the time, if you have the same sample and you're really careful about the questions you ask or the data that you're looking for, they do tend to go together. But sometimes, like especially quantitative data that's like medical record results, they just don't add up well together. Like interviewing people about their diabetes, they may talk about really very different things than their A1C score says, right? So they don't have the opportunity to converge really very well because they're really different kinds of, they're about different kinds of things. All right, I mentioned this before, it's really important to keep organized. I highly recommend that you create tables whenever you're doing mixed methods where you have your steps going down in the first column. I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to do this. Kind of like that scaffolded design that I talked about at the beginning. And then you have with that second example from the book, the picture from the book I told you. And then you have your procedures, how you do each step. And then you have your products, like what are you going to get from each step? Sometimes you might want to put something like this in a proposal, sometimes not. I think I've done it once in a proposal where I've actually put the steps of what I'm doing. I think it's useful if you have the space to do that. If people are not familiar with mixed methods and they're like, what are you doing? I don't understand. You can't just say, I'm going to do mixed methods, and they will know what you mean. So if you really need to kind of convince your reviewers, if you're trying to explain what you've done in a results paper, it's really helpful to have this. So I recommend that you do it for you and your study team regardless, because it really helps to keep you organized. Like, and you kind of check yourself, like, is that going to work? Like, can we actually do that? Can we pull that off? Is that going to, so highly recommend doing this. So some key tips on how to do integration. It's like qualitative analysis. Your brain is the analysis machine. So qualitative analysis, you can use a program like Atlas or an NVivo or whatever to help you get organized. But at the end of the day, you've got to decide what it says. So at the end of the day, if you're trying to compare quantitative and qualitative, and you've got some survey results and some interview results, you got to decide, do those things say the same thing or do they not say the same thing? To what extent do they overlap? A lot, a little, not at all. That's what you and your team are for. Now, I will say we've experimented a little bit with qualitative research using the AI, the artificial intelligence feature in Atlas. And it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. It's like a lot of AI things. It gets you kind of close. I have no idea how you would do that, use AI for mixed methods, but I guess you could put stuff together and then have, the engine try to see if they're saying the same thing. So maybe that's our future. But for right now, I don't know. You got to do the analysis yourself. So I think what you want to do is you want to name the method and what you're seeking to do. Are you looking to see if things complement each other or agree? Are you trying to expand? What is it you're trying to accomplish? And then, like a lot of qualitative research, you have a team to do this. The reason why you can feel pretty confident in results is if I read a quotation report and I summarize it, and the next person that I'm working with reads the same report and summarizes it, and a third person, and then we get together and we talk about it, we all came up with the same thing, then that's likely that that's what the answer is, right? So mixed methods is very much the same. You want to benefit from triangulation and having a team of people working and looking at the same data. Organizational diagrams and figures really help keep it clear, both at the organization and the planning stages, as well as the analysis stages. I'm going to show you some joint displays in a minute, so you'll know what I'm talking about, but joint displays also help you in your analysis. Start by comparing constructs one by one, then build the case for the overall themes across all. You can see I'm a qualitative person. I'm a qualitative analyst in my answers. A lot of mixed methods starts from qualitative, right? And then it connects to the quantitative rather than the other way around. A lot of quantitative people have a hard time getting into the qualitative mindset and how qualitative is done. It's very different. It's meant for different things. So maybe that's just my bias in saying that. Maybe I'm way off on that, but it feels that way to me. So look at the literature, talk with other people. You want to keep yourself and your team real. You want to use a lot of the qualitative techniques in terms of member checking and looking at the literature and looking for confirmation that what you are seeing is really true to your data. All right, joint displays. Joint displays are a method of analysis and a way to display results. You can use one joint display for analysis and one to display your results, or you can use the same one. The very, very basic example is you've got column of quantitative results, of column of qualitative, qualitative, and then an interpretation. This is the most basic. I'm going to show you some examples. You do not need to do these. This is just kind of get your brain thinking about how you can display this. All right, so here's one. This is not my study. I'm going to show you lots of examples from my studies, but this is not my study. This is where a group looked at opinions about ethical advantages to adaptive clinical trials. The thing what I'm trying to show you here is you'll notice over on the left is the quantitative results. So there's the mean response with the line, and then there's the confidence interval around it. So if you're a quantitative person, you'll recognize this, right? These kind of graphs. You can see that there's green, beige, purple, and blue. So the green corresponds to the answer given from the group of consultant biostatisticians. So that's this right here. And what they have is some, I believe this is quotations from the qualitative results that illustrate the consultant biostatisticians are overall giving a much higher score than the academic biostatisticians that are the blue down here. So they're using color coding to show and illustrate what that result over there that's quantitatively on the left looks like in terms of what people say about it qualitatively. So this is the way you can display some quantitative and qualitative results in one diagram. Again, this could turn out to be a very long table. I'm just showing you a certain part. So you're really only able to display a little bit here of your quantitative results, and it's going to turn into a really long table. But I like this because I think it's kind of cool and how it connects across different groups. They're trying to compare different groups. Here's another example of a joint display from an explanatory sequential design. So that one was a little bit more convergent. This one's more a sequential design. So what's happening here is that what they ended up doing is, let's see, they did an intervention and they got some results, and then they followed up with some interviews. So what they did is they had clinics score, this WRS score is the work relationship scale, so that they did the intervention, and then they picked out clinics that had high and low scores on this work relationship scale. All right. And then they looked across their qualitative themes. So rich communication was a theme. And this is communication through face-to-face conversation, which is most effective when messages are unclear or ambiguous. And then they compare the clinics with low work relationship scores and clinics with high work relationship scores. So here's a quotation illustrating what a low work relationship score clinic sounds like versus a high one. And then they move on to the next theme. The next theme around communication had to do with heedful interrelating. I don't know what these things are, but anyway, you can see the format for how they have the table, right? So it's really bringing to life the results, and it's highlighting, kind of a divergence approach. Because a lot of dissemination implementation work, what you're trying to do is understand, well, what is it about the site that didn't do so well? Like, how are they different than the site that did do well when they got the same intervention? And so you're trying to look for where the problems are. And these kinds of methods really kind of open that up. And you can see that, in this example with this rich communication, when you read the quote, they talk about they have a structure. We have a huddle every morning and we talk about things. So you can see that this clinic with a low, scale, they don't have any kind of structure. So it pops out at you what the difference is here. Okay, now I'm going to give you some examples of things that I have done. We're going to go into kind of the Wild West here. I'm in the West, so I can say that, right? I'm in Colorado. So these are some ways that we've done some mixed methods things to help illustrate patterns. So this is a 2015 paper. And what we were trying to do here is we were trying to understand the concept of care management, the intervention of care management. So care management is when you have a care manager or care managers in a primary care environment, and what their job is to help patients with chronic disease management and prevention. At least that's what our care managers were trying to do. And so we were trying to understand, why does it work better in some places than other places? And we decided to use a conceptual model called macrocognition. So macrocognition is really studying how groups function and think and make decisions in real world environments. How do they implement knowledge in real world environments, like out there in the care delivery enterprise? So what I'm going to do is show you two tables from that study. Don't worry about the results, but it was trying to illustrate a point of trying to open an understanding. Okay, so up here on the top, this table 5, we used REAIM. So if you know Borsica, you know what REAIM is, because we use REAIM a lot. So it stands for Reach, Effectiveness, Adoption, Implementation, and Maintenance. And so we decided to rank, we only had 5 practices in the study. So we decided to rank those practices on REAIM elements and determine how good they were at that. And so we ended up that practice A, we ranked number 1. Overall, they did the best job implementing this according to REAIM. So what we did was we defined reach as how many patients they reached per FTE care manager, how effective, how the patients did if they got the care management, how many of the medical providers utilize the care management. So 3 out of 3 3 providers out of 3 used it, whereas 6 out of 8 means 6 out of the 8 provider used it. The implementation was a qualitative measure where we assessed how well they were implementing. So we rated them good, fair, poor. So this is a little bit of data conversion, right? We took qualitatively and then we gave them a category. And then maintenance was how well the patients were maintaining their care management at 6 months. So we looked at all these things together and ranked them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So practice 1, practice A was the best, and practice 5 or E was the worst. So now let's go to table 6. We cross this with across the top here, coordinating, planning, decision-making, monitoring, detecting, managing the known, and sense-making and learning are cornerstones of macrocognition. If you do these things well, then this means that you are probably better at implementing things, right? So we took our practices A through E, we kept them in the same order, and then we also did a lot of qualitative work where we independently ranked the practices separate from table 5 here, how they were doing each of these things, and we categorized them. We said they're doing it well. They got 2+ marks. They're doing it well, but not as often. They got 1+ mark. Plus minus meant it was mixed, and minus meant they were not doing that or not doing that well in regards to their care management. So essentially what this says in a nutshell is practice A was actually doing a lot of these things very actively and effectively. And that we think that this has some relationship to that they were able to achieve better reach, better maintenance, better implementation, because they were using these things. So the end result is from doing this kind of qualitative, quantitative pattern analysis of looking at these things together, we said, practices that effectively do these macrocognitive functions and processes are probably going to get better outcomes. They're going to implement better. So maybe a recommendation that we'll make is do these things, right? And we might want to implement that in our trainings so that they know how to do these things effectively. Now, there's probably other factors that influence why they're not doing these things, right? Of course there are, because context matters, but it gives us some insight that we wouldn't have had if we hadn't done this analysis. Another example, this is another study that we did. When COVID happened, we ended up doing a lot of telemedicine or telehealth, right? Your organizations probably did the same thing. So we also used RE-AIM, and we looked at to what extent people triangulating across different roles said the same thing or different about their telehealth experience, to kind of see if there was a similar conceptualization of how this looked. So here's an example of a table in that paper where we looked at RE-AIM dimensions. So the first one here is reach. And then we looked to see to what extent we interviewed patients, medical providers, and medical staff in clinics. And then we looked at the results together or different. Did they say the same thing? Are they on the same page? And this can expose implementation kind of pains, like where things, if I think you're thinking the same thing that I'm thinking and you're not, then that's like a non-starter, right? That's a good place to start. So for example, on reach, it looks like, there was some similarities and some differences. Like say this mindset one, clinicians, staff, and patients acknowledged similar limitations in their mindset or their willingness to engage. So they were all kind of saying the same thing. Whereas some other things, this technology that looks like patients noted little challenges, but the practice staff did notice that there were a lot of challenges. So that might have been a sampling issue. But in summary, they had similar comments about most things, but differences. Now this is, I realized as I was putting this together, this is all qualitative. So it's not a true mixed methods example, but I just wanted to kind of use RE-AIM again to show you how you can utilize it to kind of look at the different dimensions and then get to what's alike or different across groups. All right. Here's an example that of a study I did with Mike Fetters. So he's the one that wrote the workbook. We looked at care management programs in primary care, and we did an example of mixed methods. This was published in the Journal of Mixed Methods Research. And I will say, I think this was, I'm proud of this paper because it was so hard to write. Now, I think it would be easier for me to write now, but at the time I was newer at doing mixed methods and I had Mike to help me, but it was a really hard paper to write because it got really complicated. So this is a study we did, and here's an actual figure from the study. And so what this is trying to illustrate is this was all just the qualitative work that we did and how we used all the qualitative data collection methods and analysis to get us to 3 different things. The blue box on the top right here is how we arrived at emergent themes across, sorry, I'm trying to use my arrow and it's advancing, across all practices. So this is a study of care management implementation among 5 different organizations who are implementing care management, and we were comparing that to health plan delivered care management, okay, or disease management. Then we got quality scores by practice, which is the green box, and then we utilize the information to score within. The PO means practice organization, all right? So imagine 5 practices work for one practice organization, okay? So there were, I think, 50 something practices in this overall study, organized, I think, under 5 practice organizations. So anyway, but you can see how the interviews helped us to get all the way over here to some scores for each practice and some themes across practices. And then we did additional interviews and observations to help us get to features of care management that were important. But you can see the intersecting nature of this qualitative work, how it all kind of fed into each other to get this. The other thing I want to illustrate about this particular figure is how we use some data conversion. We took qualitative results and then we categorized things, we scored things. And that's going to be another example I'm going to show you in a minute. So this is the final figure that showed our processes and our products. So remember that basic table I showed you about getting organized and having the columns of here's what steps you're taking, here's the processes you're using, and here's the products. So this is more of a figure depiction of that. So this is pretty complicated, but what I want to point out here is that this was all of our data collection methods over here on the left. So PDCM meant practice delivered care management. So the care manager was in the practice or associated with that practice organization. HPDCM meant health plan delivered. So we were really trying to understand the difference between the medical practice and their organization delivering care management versus a health plan, nice nurse delivering care management, right? Which one implements better? Which one gets better outcomes? So we were trying to accomplish a lot of different things, but you can hear it. Here's the traditional statistical analysis right across the top. So you're doing statistics, and that gives you the answer of the engagement of patients, the clinical and outcome measures. That's like your basic study, right? We do this, what results do we get clinically? The next one down was how people feel about it. So this is all the surveys. What did people think about it? What were those practices like? The next is the qualitative work. And so the qualitative involved interviews and observations at different levels. So we did end up with scores and ranking for how each of them did individually. And then we got to their priorities and the features. In this study, we used normalization process theory, or NPT. Some of you may or may not have heard of it, but normalization process theory helps you to unpackage what makes something routine or not. So normalization means routine, like routinization, all right? So we utilize that. But this is the part I want to show you right over here where all these arrows come together. This is the mixed methods part, where we used data transformation, and I'm going to explain that in a minute, to get to what were the necessary and sufficient conditions for success. All right, so we used all this quantitative information and all this qualitative information to get to our kind of final answer around what was it that made this work or not. But we also had a lot of other data. We had differences in care management features, and then we could illustrate how that worked by normalization or not. So anyway, I put this up there for a little while, but this is just an example. If you do your own study, you're going to have your own figure. But this is an example of how you can kind of put it all together in one place. Like this was a 3, 4, 5-year study. I can't remember. Several million. So, you know, big study. This is similar to the diagram I showed you on the other care management study, where we looked at degree of normalization. So how normalized were they? More pluses is good, right? So how routine did they make their care management? And then down here was one aspect of normalization process theory. It's called collective action. And so we were comparing to what extent they had centralized versus a full-time practice-based care manager. to try to understand, and I'm going to show you another example with social network analysis that I'll come up, show you in a minute, but it's really contrasting. How do you get into that black box of what's going on, where the problems are? And what we discovered from this study is that when the care management was centralized, it was kind of out there and it didn't work as well. The normalization generally didn't work as well, meaning the care management wasn't implemented as well. Now, this centralized didn't line up as well, but if you look, people didn't want to talk to somebody at their insurance company about their diabetes or hypertension or whatever. They wanted to see someone that worked with their own doctor in their practice that they could trust and that they could interface with in a different way. So that's what all of this did, is it kind of helped illustrate that this just didn't implement as well in the bottom line when it was centralized. And actually, as a result of the study, we worked with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. This is where policy change happens. As a result of doing all this study with them, they stopped providing their direct care management. And then they gave practices the money to do their own care management. So this is how understanding implementation can help, and how using mixed methods can help inform decisions about how healthcare is implemented. All right, I'm going to just go through at a time check. I think we're going to go for, I can't see anybody, but let's see, we're at 56 minutes. I was told to go for 90, but we started a little bit late with the introductions and everything. So I'm probably going to go for about another, what is these, 15 minutes or so. So let's go through the data transformation and advanced work, and then we'll be done for our discussion. So quantitizing, I remember when I showed you the integration techniques, and at the bottom in that one table, it says transformation. So this is an integration techniques because you're actually turning one kind of data into another. This can be hard to do. So I put this under the section on advanced methods. Quantitizing, it's a word. It doesn't show up, I don't think, in a dictionary or whatever. But it's when you're converting qualitative data into quantitative data. And you want to do this when you're trying to look for patterns and you're trying to organize things in a certain way. It's also an opportunity to enhance your quantitative data. And what you do is that you're converting thematic data into groups. You're categorizing it, you're giving it numbers, or you're putting it into different kind of ranked groups. It allows you to analyze with other quantitative data. You need to be very careful with this. If you're a qualitative researcher, you know this already, but that qualitative research often has a sample size issue. You're not trying to be inferential with qualitative data. You're trying to explore depth and meaning. It's a very different paradigm. So you have to be very careful to say, I'm just taking a limited data set and I'm trying to look at it in a different way. I'm not trying to do inferential types of things with it. So inferential means, if you have a population of 1,000 people and you do a power calculation, you can maybe sample 100 people, and that will infer, if you have a good response, you can infer from the 100 what the 1,000 think about an issue, right? So you have to be really careful with this. Volunteered information is not always representative information. So what I'm saying is, if I am doing a interview with someone and I say, tell me about all the issues with integrated behavioral health, and I'm just picking up something, and they say, oh, it's this and this. Well, there might be 5 other answers, but they don't say anything about that. That's different than I ask that person, here's 7 things. Pick out the ones that apply to you. They might answer that differently, right? So you know, if you turn that into frequencies or numbers or whatever, you have to be really clear. This is just what people came up with. This is as the response. It's not selecting out of a list like with a survey. All right. The other problem can be that you're squishing down your data in a way that you lose the meaning, because you're throwing away a lot of good, rich, you know, thick description data. And you're classically putting qualitative into a quantitative paradigm. So there's lots of reasons to not do this. So let me tell you why you might want to do it. Here's what it looks like is like frequency of a theme or number of units of each theme in a percentage, or you're looking, so you're turning your kind of themes and your, you know, your answers into numbers, you're categorizing things. Number of times a significant statement appears on a page, amount of time that elapses. I actually think a lot of times these what you're doing is you're taking qualitative information and then you're categorizing something, like kind of like that example where I took how well those practices were implementing care management, and we came up and we categorized them. We said they're good, fair, poor, right? So we're putting them into categories. The opposite of this is qualitizing. So this is when you take quantitative data and you're turning it into qualitative. And you might say, how in the world do you do that? How do you take numbers and turn it into qualitative? It involves some leaps, okay? And those leaps are where you're kind of, you know, expanding beyond what you actually have. So why is it not advancing? So you convert quantitative data into qualitative text data. So essentially what you're doing is calling the quantitative results you have, and then you're describing it in more of a thematic way so that you can put it together with other qualitative data or just use it that way. So, so what you want to do, this is not really that uncommon, because whenever you write a paper with only quantitative results, you're kind of doing a form of this already, right? What you're doing is you're describing what you found. And that's kind of what you're doing here, is maybe you have an explanation that you would turn into something that seems more like a theme, right? So say you have people ask about accessibility of integrated behavioral health, and you have some results around that, and you turn that into maybe different themes around accessibility. All right, so that's kind of what that looks like. You want to be careful that you don't leap too far and that you're really being true to your data. It's really better to do the follow-up qualitative work to make sure that you're right about the quantitative answers before just trying to say, I'm going to put my own summary on it. So that's why I put a lot of caveats on that. It can be hard to do and it can require experience. And it really doesn't play to the talents of either kind of researcher. But in the next examples I show you, they use qualitative and qualitizing and quantizing. So I think it's really, really informative to kind of get deeper into understanding. So this is summarizing trends as increasing or decreasing, giving percentages of answers around kind of a thematic response. Creating typologies is another thing that you can do. Is, you know, this group looks like this, all the practices that look like this, we're going to describe this way and put them into this category and this category. So those are some things that you can do. All right, I'm going to give you two examples of mixed methods that involve data transformation. One is configural comparative methods. You may or may not have heard of this, but it's really, really useful for implementation and dissemination research. So CCMs are a family of methods that allow considering program features and contextual conditions together to examine relationships in groups or sets with outcomes. It does not use statistics. It's a different kind of, it uses math, but it's a different kind of math. And so CCMs do a lot of qualitative to quantitative, so quantizing. And so I'm going to walk you through a study we did so you can see how we used it. I just want to point out a lot of people have the hard time, especially quantitative people, wrapping their heads around what this is. It's kind of more like computer programming in the end. It's like you need this and this and this to make the light switch goes on, right? Like engineering or something. Okay. It's not it's not inferential statistics. Excuse me. All right. So statistics assume linearity and normality to make assumptions about larger populations. CCMs do not do that. It's not linear data. Linear models assume a single explanatory model, whereas CCMs allow for multiple explanatory models. There's no allows for factor independence, and the sample sizes can be smaller. You can have a large sample size, but you can do it with a smaller sample size. So it involves quantizing. You are moving from the concept of variables to conditions. You're using groups of cases with an outcome condition, another group of cases without the outcome condition. And then you're trying to understand what distinguishes those groups. It allows for equifinality, which is multiple paths to an outcome. Okay, so what CCM does, it helps to identify conditions that produce an outcome, either singly or in combination. What it includes is necessary and sufficient conditions. So necessary conditions must be present to produce a good outcome, but it's not guaranteed for a good outcome, meaning water must be present to have the ground wet. That's an example. Sufficient conditions are those alone or in combination to produce a good outcome. So those have a good outcome, but it's not necessary to produce an outcome, meaning there are other paths to a good outcome. So the ground could be wet because it rained or because somebody watered it. Don't worry about getting this all down. Just try to think about the big picture. There are two types of CCMs mostly. There's coincidence analysis and qualitative comparative analysis. I've never used coincidence analysis. So I'm not an expert on that, but there are some people who are really good at it, and I've included some references on that. And I think it's very wonderful and exciting. I just have used QCA. So the CNA uses a bottom up, and the QCA is kind of like an all in. So think of like when you do factor analysis, do you put one in, then the next in, then the next in, or do you kind of put everything in? There's lots of debate about which one is better, and I'm not going to get into that, but I'm really just trying to illustrate it mostly as a mixed methods, advanced method. So you want to determine what your outcome is, what you consider what your conditions are impacting the outcome. You need to collect data on the conditions and consider which are variant. So to use the CCMs, you've got to have some good outcomes and some not good outcomes, because you've got to be able to differentiate. You gather data, you calibrate your data. So that's the quantizing technique. And then you conduct the analysis. So here's a study that we did looking at successful registry implementation. So we were studying 13 practices, and we were trying to understand which ones implemented their registry successfully and which ones did not. And so we did a qualitative comparative analysis. So you can see here, one of the things that we did was we qualitatively studied all of these practices, and we determined thematic areas that seemed important. So here's some of them: whether they were part of a health system, whether they were a key person, they had a key person implementing this, did they have a quality improvement mindset, did they have capability in their medical record, etc. We defined what that was, and then we created a calibration system. So in QCA, you have to assign each thing on a 0 to 1 scale. So you can do 0 and 1, or you can do increments in between. Then you create a table. So we had 13 practices. So here's P1 through P13. And then we scored them all based on all of these conditions that we thought would be important. And then over here on the right is their outcome. So you can see this practice was great. And then the next one down had a 0.65. So they didn't have great success with implementing their registry. This one down here, P11, was really not so great. This is a fuzzy set, which means that we used not 0 and 1, we used a range between 0 and 1. And then you do an analysis, and there are specific programs that you use to do this analysis, but you get equations in the outcome. So in this case, health system, key person, resource, and leadership was one of the equations that needed to come together to make them have a good outcome. So there were 3 what we call recipes that added up. So essentially, like EHR capability and some of the other things, what were they? Yeah, all of these things mattered, but there were some other things on our list that didn't matter. So the takeaway is that if you're going to implement a registry, you've got to be thinking about having a quality improvement mindset or a key person who does it, resources, and leadership. Those are some ingredients you have to make it successful, at least from this study. But what I'm trying to illustrate is how you can take qualitatively collected data, put it into quantitative, and use it to analyze your data in a really different way. And that's why it's called qualitative comparative analysis, because it starts with qualitative. All right. One other example I want to give you, and that is social network analysis. This can be a qualitative method that involves quantizing. It can also be quantitative only. So actually the example I have is more quantitative only, but you can use qualitative information to convert it to quantitative and then and analyze it from there. So it's an analytic method to examine networks and their communication and workflow patterns. And this is really, really helpful for dissemination implementation research, because social relationships can be a key factor in driving implementation. So what you want to do is think about what you're trying to study, identify and collect the data on that. And then again, you use a program to calculate, I'm calling it the statistics, but it's more like social network data results, not traditional statistics, and interpret the results. So let me work through another example. So this is a social network analysis on the care manager data that we used. So what we did was we wanted to know if where the care manager was located mattered and what functions mattered around chronic disease management. So we gave people a survey and we asked them this question: pick out the 3 most important people from anywhere that you talk with, seek advice from, or refer to regarding management of patients with chronic disease. And then they would name a person. Okay, Jodie Holtrop is one of my people. We would say, what is Jodie's role? Where is she located? What is the frequency of interacting with her? What things do you talk about? And how important are these conversations about chronic disease management? 3 care manager structures emerged. There was the offsite, the co-located, and the embedded. So the offsite is the care manager is not in the practice. The co-located is they're in the practice some of the time, but they actually work for a different organization. And the embedded means they work for that practice and they're in that practice. So this is what you get from social network analysis. Someone was teasing me one time and they said, oh, show me your Star Wars diagrams. This look like Star Wars or something. But essentially what you can see here is that using social network analysis, again, you need someone who knows what they're doing, but it shows how this green diamond here, that's the care manager. Look at this example on the left. The circle around the whole diagram is who works in the practice. So these care managers work outside the practice. The arrows depict who nominates who to be in their 3 people. So when the care manager was outside the practice, there's not much connection, right? There's no connection here with this, care manager. And these other 2, there's no arrows pointing to them. So nobody has nominated them as important. Whereas over here, this care manager works in the practice. Look at how many arrows are pointing this care manager. And you can see that it's a lot of clinical communication around care management. And the arrows are solid, meaning it's frequent communication. This person's in the core of the issues that are happening. And so that's really important. This means that having the role structured this way, and we saw this again and again. All right, so this is just one example, but anytime the care manager was in the practice, they became a core part of the team, and they were consulted with and utilized in a very different way. Here's some of what I call the statistics, but the bottom line is that the embedded and co-located care manager were in the core. This is this red down here at the bottom, much, much more often. When they were offsite, they were just kind of forgotten about and not utilized, and it was just too cumbersome. It just didn't work out very well. There's a lot of other kind of data points that you can look at with social network analysis. But again, this is an illustration of mixed methods. So you could go out and do qualitative data collection, rank and score, convert that to numbers, which is a type of mixed methods, and utilize that data. So how do these methods work with mixed methods? You can gather data qualitatively or quantitatively or both. You convert that data into numbers, you can categorize that data, and then you can analyze it to see patterns in a different way. When you want to set this up to do one of these methods, you want to be thinking that you're going to convert the data. So you want to make sure that you're really accurate in what you're doing. But it allows you to see your data very differently, spatially and relationally. So in summary, I'm going to be wrapping up here. Mixed methods involves qualitative and quantitative data collection analysis and integrated in some way, even if that integration is one to another, together, or you're turning one into another. Mike always said that you get from mixed methods, you get a 1 + 1 = 3, not a 1 + 1 = 2. That the benefit of mixed methods is that you get to see your data in a more complete and different way. You can use diagrams, figures, and tables and organizational structures to help facilitate your use of mixed methods. And there's a lot of designs and approaches that can be utilized, and you can choose what's appropriate for you. I just was going to mention, I'm from the University of Colorado. We offer 2 graduate level courses in our graduate program. One is qualitative and mixed methods. About half to a third of that class is on how to do mixed methods in a really deep way. The other is part of the Dissemination Implementation Certificate program that Borshika is a co-leader of, and it's called Designs in Mixed Methods and Implementation Research specifically. About a good half of that class is mixed methods. You're welcome to visit our website, and I'm sorry I asked for a QR code, but it didn't, I don't know how to do that. So we didn't get it fast enough, but you can go just Google University of Colorado Accords Dissemination Implementation Program. There's a lot of resources on there. Some on mixed methods, not a ton, but that's just pointing you there. And I am going to stop sharing.